A version of this documentary originally aired on The Current. Storylines is produced by AC Rowe and Craig Desson. The show is part of the CBC Audio Doc Unit. If you enjoyed today's show and want to take us with you wherever you go, check out our podcast. We're on CBC Listen, Spotify, Apple, Google, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Jasmine Jiwa. Thanks for listening.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg. Commotion with Elamin Abdelmahmoud.
It's time to talk about funflation.
Crime Story.
You got one witness who can't be found.
This American Life with Ira Glass.
There are signs that read, see something, say something.
Radio Lab.
What is coming up? What is going wrong, actually?
The Sunday Magazine with Pia Chattopadhyay.
How does the last 24 plus hours complicate or change things?
Telling Stories. Sunday night on CBC Radio 1 and on the Listen app.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for
free. This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Riley Lachuk in Winnipeg. At noon, we are at 11 degrees, a mainly sunny sky today. We are on the way to a high of 17 this afternoon. Gusty south winds to 40 through the afternoon today. A new report into the sale of Lions Place, the former Lions Place apartment, says it is an example of organized elder neglect and abuse. The former 55-plus supportive housing building on Portage Avenue was sold by Lions Housing Centres to a private company. The scathing report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives calls for an immediate public inquiry and audit into management. Tom Sims' 94-year-old mother has lived there for 25 years. He says this report needs to guide new rules around such housing.
Sadly, Lions Place is kind of a poster child for a lot of concrete examples of what's wrong. So I do see alongside the funding, the federal government needs to be looking at their regulations.
Sim says people who live there are anxious about what will happen next year when an agreement to maintain rent controls runs out. A man is facing a first-degree murder charge in a fatal shooting that happened a month ago in Winnipeg. Police were called to a suite on Manitoba Avenue in the afternoon on March 16th. They found 35-year-old Robert Clayton Smith with a gunshot wound. He later died in the hospital. Police arrested 27-year-old Maxim Dale Garneau at the Remand Centre yesterday on a charge of first-degree murder. He remains in custody. Officials in Alberta are preparing for a busy wildfire season. 63 wildfires are currently burning out of control, across the province, but officials say none of those, are out of control. The Ministry for Forestry and Parks, Todd Lowen, is asking Albertans to stay vigilant.
I urge you to assess your property for wildfire danger and take any preventive action you can to address these risks. This includes breaking up fuel sources that could ignite a structure, removing trees in close proximity to your home, and properly maintaining your gutters and roofs to rid the materials that could easily ignite, such as leaves and dry needles.
There's currently one evacuation order in effect along the Peace River northwest of Edmonton. That is impacting about 30 people. Police in Ontario are noticing a significant change in what's happening to stolen cars. Most are exported out of the country, but criminal syndicates are increasingly selling them within Ontario, exploiting a loophole in the provincial regulation system. David Common has the story.
Speeds about, they're going about 120.
In Peel Region, undercover officers are discreetly following a suspect.
Oh, actually, that's them right there.
The takedown nets a man they say reflects a growing trend in auto theft, re-vinning, where a vehicle's unique registration number is copied and used on a similar stolen vehicle. Ontario's vehicle database can't speak to similar systems in other provinces or U.S. states. That means criminals can harvest a VIN from a vehicle outside Ontario and use it here without a red flag. That needs to change, says Peel Deputy Chief Nick Milinovich.
That's why a national registry that moves itself beyond any sort of provincial jurisdiction is important in all capacities.
In a statement, Ontario's Ministry of the Attorney General said they'll address any weakness without specifying what they would do right now. David Coleman, CBC News, Mississauga.
Well, after months of delay, American military hardware is once again on its way to Ukraine.
I'm making sure the shipments start right away. In the next few hours, literally a few hours, we're going to begin sending in equipment to Ukraine for air defense munitions, for artillery, for rocket systems, and armored vehicles.
That's U.S. President Joe Biden just hours after signing into law a new military spending bill that was passed by Congress overnight. It includes more than $60 billion in funding for Ukraine. A military spending bill that was passed by the U.S. Congress overnight also includes a demand for the owners of TikTok. The parent company is being ordered to sell the app to a non-Chinese buyer, and if a sale is not finalized within 9 months, TikTok will be banned in the United States. Richard Madden has more from Washington.
U.S. lawmakers have long warned the Chinese government could access TikTok's user data to spy on Americans or spread propaganda or disinformation. TikTok is wildly popular. More than 170 million Americans use it, but FBI Director Christopher Wray is sounding the alarms.
TikTok represents a national security concern. And the reason I say that is that TikTok's parent company is beholden to the Chinese government.
Now, the earliest a ban would start would be January next year, notably after November's election. TikTok will likely be a major force during the election campaign for candidates to reach younger voters, so delaying the ban may help politicians avoid the backlash. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
And there were scenes of chaos today on the streets of the British capital. Several horses galloped loose through the London traffic, crashing into vehicles and smashing windows. They were part of a military parade rehearsal near Buckingham Palace, but they were spooked by noise from a nearby construction site. The army says 3 soldiers were thrown off and were taken to hospital with light injuries. The horses were eventually rounded up and are receiving veterinary care. And that is the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can find news updated throughout the day by heading to cbc.ca/Manitoba. 17 the high in Winnipeg today under a sunny sky. Brandon looking at a high of 19 degrees.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today on Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and wherever you are on your CBC Listen app or your YouTube channel. Go to CBC Manitoba's channel, actually. Scams, they're getting more and more sophisticated. More and more of us are becoming victims. What if scammers tried to get you to do? Call in after 12:30 with your stories of frustration or of them trying to scam you. An expert will be with us for tips on how to shut them down and how to protect your loved ones. You know those quirky little shops you go into sometimes that are just magical? We're going to take you to one in Eriksdale. But first, Radio Noon begins with the former assistant coach of the Humboldt Broncos talking about his healing from trauma, addictions, and mental illness. Chris Beaudry's whole life was upended on April 6th, 2018. Does that date sound familiar? That was the date of the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. The assistant coach with the Humboldt Broncos was not on the bus that day, but the trauma he faced led him to challenges with mental illness. Now he's a speaker sharing his story and advocating for mental health supports. He's headed to Brandon today to speak to the community and at a conference about mental health. The focus of that conference is building hope and renewing connections. He joins us now by Zoom. Hi, Chris. Thanks for being with us.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I see you're in your car. Is that because you're on your way to Brandon right now?
I was actually south of Brandon this morning chatting with some farmers, and I didn't make it back to Brandon.
Well, we appreciate you stopping on the side of the road. You can see Chris, by the way, if you join us on our YouTube channel. Hi there, everyone watching on YouTube. Chris, you're now a mental health speaker. When did you realize you had wisdom worth sharing? We're going to, I think, try to reestablish our link with Chris. Does that make sense? Because he was coming through sounding a little bit like, I don't know, an alien or something. Has anyone ever talked about cell phones and cell phone coverage, Wi-Fi in Manitoba? Oh, yeah, I have, quite a lot. It really is something we need to improve. As we try to reconnect with Chris, why don't I tell you a little bit more about the conference that he's going to be speaking at? It's called Mental Health on the Prairies. And there are a lot of people there, academics, healthcare professionals, community groups, and also people who have lived experience with mental illness and addictions. They want to be heard. And the folks organizing the conference want to hear them too. Chris Beaudry, we've reestablished connection with him. We might not be on YouTube anymore. We might just be looking at a picture. Chris, how are you?
I'm good.
I'm good. Thank you so much. Sorry about all that. You were telling us that you were speaking with farmers earlier today, and then I asked you a question about when you realized that the story of how you healed after, as an assistant coach with the Humboldt Broncos, you survived that terrible crash but lost so many people you loved. How did you realize, when did you realize that your healing could help others?
You know, I think I knew it before the accident happened. Over 4 years the day when the crash happened. And so I knew before that sharing my story was important. But when my high school asked me to come and speak at grad, I didn't even know what to tell them. I went in and I hadn't been sleeping. I'd been on the tractor for days seeding. And I just told the kids kind of, don't miss out on what's happening now. Don't get caught in the future. Stay where you are right now. Realize it's May. You're still in NACM. You're still with your friends, and enjoy that. Enjoy what's here today. And so many of them told me how inspiring that was. And to me, I was like, wow, I didn't think any of this was that profound.
Unfortunately,
I've really found that.
I'm so sorry.
The simple things are what work.
The simple things are what works. We missed a bit of your sentence there, Chris, just again because of the cell coverage. But I think you were saying, was it anxiety that was keeping you sort of out of the present, and that you were concerned these high school students you spoke to might also suffer from?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's mainly our mind. Our mind creates that anxiety by going to the future, or it creates the depression by pulling us into the past. And when we can understand that our mind creates so much of these sensations, we can actually live with a bit of peace and with a bit of ease.
How do you do that, though? How do you separate yourself from your mind and realize that there's chemicals in there that might just be a little off today, so your thoughts might not actually be real?
Well, I think it's like anything else. It takes a lot of practice. It's not something like that we're going to jump in and be amazing at instantly. But the more we practice it, the more we raise our capacity for being with difficult things, so that when anxiety and depression don't show up, when they show up, that we're not afraid of them anymore. And when that fear isn't there, and we just accept, oh, well, today I am anxious, it doesn't become that big of a deal then.
So you had a grounding in mental health awareness before the tragic crash. How did that awareness and what you already knew help you survive that grief?
You know, early on, I had support, and I knew that there were methods and things that I could do for myself that would help. But one thing that made it really difficult was when I leaned on what I used to do before the crash. That didn't work. And so I learned really quick, oh, there's so much more available. There are so many more techniques, methods, ways of healing, different ways of processing emotion in the body that I was able to explore. And that actually helped me even later on in life when my daughter was really ill, because I was able to, again, remember, you know what what worked yesterday doesn't have to work today.
What was
Something
it?
new can work today.
What was it you used to lean on that was no longer healthy for you?
Just sharing my story, like when I would go to AA meetings, was enough in the past, and that wouldn't do it in Humboldt. I had to emotionally revisit not only what happened at the crash site, in the morgue, in the hospital, but I had to go even further back and start to feel what it was like inside when I was a kid, when I was abandoned by my mom, or when I was beaten by her. All those suppressed emotions I had to start actually embodying.
You spent the morning speaking with farmers, and I only mention that because I'm thinking of the people I know. I'm thinking of my dad, who was from a family of farmers in Prince Edward Island, who would hear me talk about, going back to childhood experiences and maybe shake his head because he thinks that's hooey palooey or something like that. It's real, though, isn't it? How real is and important is it to deal with those first memories?
I think they become the patterns that drive us if we don't deal with them. And that's really what my talk's about, is that every one of these patterns, things that have happened to us, they created a coping mechanism, and they used to help us, and now it harms us. And we can be free of that if we actually understand and can feel what it was like when this was created. And that's what sets us free from them.
The talk you're giving today in Brandon, it's tonight is a public talk, correct?
That's correct.
And where is it and what time?
It's at 7 p.m. and it is, I don't actually know the name of where it's held. I would have to check my itinerary.
Well, I'm jumping around here a little bit anyhow. We'll check for you because you're driving. Well, you've pulled off to the side of the road right now, so you don't have everything right in front of you. The title of it is The Heroes and Dragons of Mental Health. What is a dragon of mental health?
Well, this comes from some of the work of Dr. Jose Stevens, and it's a dragon of mental health is just one of the 7 core patterns that humans can develop. Generally, most people have 2, and they show up in their lives in all different ways, different forms. But if you're lucky enough, like me, to have the pattern of stubbornness, you get to work with all 7 of these, which can be self-deprecation, self-destruction, fear of vulnerability, fear of missing out shows up as impatience, fear of privation, which shows up as greed, and the list goes on and on. And to me, they all have a different flavor of what that feels like inside. And those generally drive us to a lot of our...
We've lost Chris again just momentarily.
I'm back.
Yay.
People keep calling me, and I have to not allow their calls to come through.
Stop being so popular, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, we hear a lot about mental health these days. We also hear from a lot of people that there's just not enough help out there. The waiting lists are too big. The cost to see a therapist is too expensive for many of us. From your experience, is there a way people can start their own healing?
Absolutely. I think it starts by sharing your story, and that doesn't have to be with a professional. It can be with a friend or a loved one. And the most important aspect of that is, I think, is to be brutally honest when you're actually sharing it. Try not to delude yourself with your own mind. Try not to stay in the exact same spot you were the last time you told the story. Let every time you share shine a little more light on those dark spots so you can share a little deeper, a little more. And that, I think, is a great place to start setting yourself free from some of this pain.
But it's painful to start digging it up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're born with nervous systems. I think for humans, the pain is mandatory, but suffering's optional. We're not getting out of this one alive. Like, we're going to face suffering, or we're going to face pain. We're going to face grief. We're going to lose loved ones. We're going to lose jobs and relationships and roles of who we think we are. And that's going to hurt. And the more we deny that, the more we're going to suffer. So again, the pain is mandatory, but the suffering part's optional.
That's a tricky one to learn, though, how to let go of how to change your thought process so you can let go of the suffering, because that doesn't feel optional when you're in it.
No, absolutely not. And I think at times it takes great suffering at first to actually realize that. I know it did for me. I avoided so many things in my life. I mean, I said I was 4 years sober and I thought I was really doing good when the crash happened, but it showed me the ways that I still pushed away and didn't want to actually look at the pain I was facing. I mean, that when the 500-pound grief showed up and kicked the door down, he let him and all of his 5-pound friends and 10-pound griefs through the door. And I had to look at the grief of a lifetime in one moment.
Chris Beaudry, one message, the one thing you're hoping people take away from your talks today.
And I'm not coming to save you. The only person that's saving you is you. You have just as much power and just as much ability and capacity to heal as I do, and you're going to be the one that saves yourself.
And it can be done. You can do it.
Yes.
Chris Beaudry, thank you so much for this conversation today, and I hope you have really fruitful conversations while you're in Brandon. Chris Beaudry is a former Humboldt Broncos assistant coach. He spent many years learning about mental health and healing. He'll be speaking at a mental health conference. It's called Mental Health on the Prairies. It's at Brandon University. His talk there is tomorrow, but he's also speaking at a public talk in Brandon tonight. For more on the conference, the website is brandonu.ca.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
The time is 12:20. I'm Janet Stewart, and you're listening to Radio Noon. Scams are getting more and more sophisticated. More and more of us are becoming victims. But what do scammers have? Like, what have they tried to do to you? That's my question. Call in after 12:30 with your story. You've seen the warnings. Scams are everywhere. How do you protect your loved ones? We've got an expert joining us after 12:30. Be sure to join us and call in. Today in Winnipeg, we've got a beautiful sunny sky. 17 degrees will be our high today. The wind's going to pick up. We could have gusts to 40 kilometers an hour, and that's actually the story across southern Manitoba today. It's sunshine in Brandon as well. The same south wind that's pushing the temperature up to a nice 19 degrees in Brandon. 17 will be our high in Winnipeg. We're looking for a mix of sun and cloud in Brandon tomorrow and sunshine for Winnipeg. In Thompson today, it's a mix of sun and cloud, high of 9 degrees. Mainly cloudy tomorrow and a high of 13. I'll tell you more about your weather a little bit later in our program. We'll find out what the weekend will hold and help you plan when you want to do some stuff outside. The CBC's Bryce Hoy was in Ericsdale last month. It's part of our Communities in Focus pop-up bureau system, something CBC's been doing. We take reporters and open a bureau in a different part of the province so that we hear the stories of people there. What are we missing? What should we be talking about? Well, people in Ericsdale were talking about this one great couple behind a quirky spot in the community. They are bringing people together through art and music. It's a music shop they run, filled with instruments and art. Here's CBC's Bryce Hoy to take us inside.
It's open mic night at Derek McCandless and Don Mills' music shop and custom framing store in Ericsdale. How would you describe the aesthetic, the vibe in here, Derek?
Country. I have met so many people in this community through them that I probably wouldn't have, even though we are like-minded and we share interests, but it's because of this hub.
That you'd ever say goodbye. Mills and McCandless are adding to their community in more ways than one. In the fall of 2020, they bought this building. What of those instruments behind you do you play?
I can't see right now, but I think pretty much all of them. Yeah.
Well, do you mind if I go back on something I said? Both thought it best that we'd just be friends, though I agreed. And at the time, my intentions were good. Well, do you mind if I go back on my word?
Here they put on open mic nights, Derek sells and fixes instruments, Dawn does custom framing, and her pottery is also for sale.
It's a meeting place for some people.
Picture framing.
I pot in the back studio. I've got a studio space to do that. Working on the Roger Kimley Folk Festival.
That festival, named after Derek's good friends Roger Leonard Young, David Kim Russell, Tony Leon or Lee Areniak, all of them died within months of each other in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, we were just good friends.
That must have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And our dog at the same time.
Yeah.
During the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was a heart-wrenching year.
The summer festival has grown from there. There's a makers market, car show, kids activities, workshops, camping, good food, and, of course, music. This year, it's located at the Ericsdale Sports Grounds. Mills's cousin, Dana Jo Burdett, has been part of the growth, helping with branding, social media, and marketing. She says Mills and McCandless have also helped her feel more connected.
So there's more of my people out here than I thought. So I'm very grateful for that.
Their efforts to breathe new artistic life into this community haven't gone unnoticed. Interlake Gimli MLA Derek Johnson gave them a shout out during question period in March.
It's my pleasure to recognize the Roger Kimley Music Festival, its founders, and its committed volunteers for building and sustaining this culinary enriching event for Ericsdale and the Interlake as a whole.
Dolly Lindell has lived in Ericsdale for 30 years. She says she values what McCandless and Mills are doing.
There's a lot of people that we didn't even know had musical talent and aspirations, and this has definitely helped bring it out.
It's just being part of the community, and this is our part of the community. So music is more of just finally, I think, it's that gift that I was given that needs to be shared. And I don't think I could live without sharing it or without having it. So,
the Roger Kimley Music Festival runs this August 16th through 18th. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Ericsdale.
Doesn't that sound like the type of shop you'd love to see and explore? Bryce wrote a full story about this on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, and it's got some video embedded in it, so check that out. Hey, we just heard from Derek McCandless and his partner Dawn Mills. Here's one of Derek's original acoustic songs.
Well, do you mind if I go back on something I said? Both thought it best that we'd just be friends, though I agreed. And at the time, my intentions were good. Well, do you mind if I go back on my word? Well, do you mind if I go back on my word? Thought of never loving you seems so absurd, though I agreed. At the time, my intentions were good. Well, do you mind if I go back on my word? You must admit, each and every time, your hugs get longer than mine. You agreed, and at the time my intentions were good. Well, do you mind if I go back on my word?
That is Derek McCandless playing and singing an original work from his music shop in Ericsdale. Still ahead on Radio Noon today, we want to hear from you about the scams that scammers have tried to pull. What have you faced? Our number, 204-780893. Call in now. We've got an expert who's going to join us and talk us through it. 204-788-0893. Call now. And we'll talk with Sergeant Dana McCallum of the Brandon Police Service. Right now, it's 12:30.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Riley Lachuk. It's 12:30 and sunny across southern Manitoba. Right now in Winnipeg, 13 degrees. We're on the way to a high of 19 this afternoon, 17 this afternoon in Winnipeg. The treatment of seniors living in the former Lions Place on Portage Avenue is being called a betrayal of trust. That's the title of a report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives into the sale of the building to a private company. For decades, the building was supportive housing for people aged 55 plus. Tom Sims' 94-year-old mother has lived in that building for 25 years. He says the province has a 2-year agreement with the new owners to maintain supports and rent control.
So the seniors that remain there are pretty anxious about, a year has gone by, so there's a year left. So looking forward to working with the new provincial government to extend that kind of protection.
The report describes the sale as organizational elder abuse and recommends an immediate inquiry. The city of Brandon says after significant feedback on the pause of its green bin collection, it will bring it back. The city said last week it was pausing collection due to staffing shortages. Now it says a revised collection schedule will begin next Tuesday for green, blue, and black bins. The city says residents will maintain their regular collection days with an alternating schedule for the green and blue bins each week. The taps are back on for American military aid to Ukraine.
When our allies are stronger, we are stronger.
That's President Joe Biden announcing he has signed a foreign security bill that calls for a total of $61 billion worth of supplies, including air defense munitions. Kyiv says the material is desperately needed to fend off increasing Russian airstrikes. The package passed following months of stalemate in Congress, largely due to opposition from some hardline Republicans. The bill also includes $26 billion for Israel and $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific region, mostly for Taiwan. Biden says the first shipments of equipment to Ukraine will be dispatched within hours. Back in this country, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the Canada Revenue Agency is very, very good at getting the money that it is owed. And Saskatchewan's premier should take note of that. Scott Moe has pledged the province will not send Ottawa the money it collects from the federal carbon price on natural gas. The move breaks the law, and Trudeau says the CRA has ways of making sure that it can collect its money. And Canada's Katarina and Colton Lott scored a 10-4 win over China today to improve to 6-1 at the World Mixed Doubles Curling Championship in Sweden. The husband and wife team from Gimli sit in second place in Group B behind the host Swedes, who beat Australia 7-6 this morning to improve to 7-0. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg.
I I know of people in Gimli who will be cheering them on.
I know
Have
that.
been getting out.
Yes.
Like, what time is the game? Like
Yeah.
on Facebook, everybody's talking about it, and that's exciting.
It's quite exciting.
It is. Thank you so much,
No problem.
Riley. Let's take a look at our weather today. It's feeling far more springy than it is like curling weather when you want to be inside. But hey, any day's a good day to curl if you ask someone who loves the sport. Winnipeg, right now, we're sitting at 13 degrees. Our high today will be 17. Right now in Thompson, it's 5. At the Paw, it's 14 degrees. I'm kind of jumping all over the place today. Who else can beat us? Swan River's at 15 degrees. Our hot spot at the moment in the province of Manitoba is 16.5 degrees in Carmen. Wow. And Churchill, sadly, -8, you're the cold spot in Manitoba. But things are going to be picking up in terms of warmth. We're going to get up to 17 degrees, as I mentioned, in Winnipeg today. In Brandon, we're getting up to 7 to 19 degrees. In Brandon, we're going to have sunshine today. There's that south wind that'll push up the temperature, gust to 40 degrees. The wind's going to change direction slightly, become southeast this evening, and then tomorrow will be a mix of sun and cloud with some showers Thursday night going into Friday in Brandon. Friday we'll have a periods of rain, and it'll be cloudy with a 40% chance of showers in the evening in Westman. Clearing and windy with a high of 9 for your Saturday, and sunshine and 13 for your Sunday. In the Red River Valley area, it looks like Friday is going to be very sunny. 22 degrees will be the high tomorrow in Winnipeg. On our weekend, Friday, we're going to have some rain. So plan some indoor activities then. Cloudy with a 60% chance of showers through the day, rain through the night, showers into our Saturday and 9 degrees, sunshine for our Sunday. In Thompson, 9 degrees is the high, so you still got a lot of warming up to do in Thompson today. Mix of sun and cloud, so clearly getting a mostly cloud day there. Today, and certainly in Churchill, I apologize. Thompson, you're at 5 degrees. You're not at -8. Churchill's at -8. Big difference between Thompson and Churchill. Thursday in Thompson, 13 degrees, mostly cloudy and sunshine for your Friday. 6 degrees, sunshine for your Saturday, and a mix of sun and cloud for your Sunday. Well, nothing can make things feel more cloudy than realizing you've just been robbed. And that's what scammers are trying to do. They're trying to take your money. How concerned are you about scams? They're becoming more and more frequent. And you know what? Seniors and newcomers, people who don't really know how the laws work, what the rules are here, are often the targets of these scams. We all need to know what scams are out there. So tell us what you've faced. Share your experience. Give us a call now, 204-788-0893. You'll talk to our producer, Wendy. If you don't want to use your name on air because something's happened and you're embarrassed, we understand. The number to call, we still want to hear from you, 204-788-0893. The Brandon Police Service actually posted a warning this week about a new kind of scam. Scammers were sending out their own messages, pretending to be the Brandon Police Service. The fake message reads like this: our automated speed system has detected your vehicle exceeding the speed limit. And then this fake message that scammers are putting out says you need to pay right away to settle this and avoid having to go to court and make an appearance. Sergeant Dana McCallum is a public information officer with the Brandon Police Service and joins us now by Zoom. Good afternoon. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Now, I got to ask you, as a person and as an officer, what did you think when you first heard of scammers pretending to be Brandon police officers?
Well, it's not the first time this has happened. They seem to be coming up with new ways to try to get people's money. That's why we wanted to post to make people aware that we do not send out those types of text messages to people.
You don't send out that kind of text messages. You're not the only police service that has faced this kind of fake alert. What else has happened with Brandon Police? How else have you been have people pretended to be you?
That's the most recent one. We've had numerous different types of scams, but the text claiming that we have photo radar, which we don't actually have, has been the latest scam that seems to be going around.
You wouldn't send out that kind of message. That would take, in the moment, some clear thinking. You know, sometimes they're panicked, and there's a threat in this fake message of, if you don't pay now, you're going to have to go to court. What is it about that rush now, you have to take action now, that should send up a red flag?
I think that's the scammer's hope is that they have this sense of urgency and this extortion to them that you have to do this now or you're going to be in big trouble. And it plays on people's emotions. And that's their hope is that they'll click and they won't think. And then they're out the money before they've had that time to clearly think about what they just did.
So we talk about that, the playing on emotions. How might they play on your emotions?
Well, they're just trying to see if they can get a rise out of you. They want to make you feel panicked that maybe your credit's in jeopardy or that you have to pay this money or you're going to be arrested. They play on people's fears so that they do something without thinking clearly.
So talk to us about red flags. Like when should you, sometimes there are bills you do have to pay urgently. When should you go, okay, wait a minute, I need to take a moment?
I think if you're receiving a call and someone's asking you for money, don't be afraid to say no. Do your research. If someone's calling in the grandparent scam saying that there's a family member that is hurt in some way or needs your help, don't be afraid to hang up, call that family member to verify what's going on. There's no harm in saying no. Take your time, do your research, make sure you're not giving out any personal information. Never scan your ID if that's asked for. I know we've had cases where people have scanned their passports or scanned their license to send. Don't do any of that. Be aware also of any upfront fees. If someone's asking you to pay for something upfront, that should be a red flag.
So
Another thing that
even if they seem like a really nice person, a really nice person who's going to come and clean your ducts, or I don't know, you laughed when I said like they seem like a really nice person, but you know that happens, right? These scammers are good.
They are very good at what they do. That's why they've been so successful. They come up with new and unique ways to get people to fall for what they're selling.
And what sometimes are they selling? I know I get a lot of calls at my home about duct cleaning. Is that something I should worry about?
Yeah, I said I know a lot of people will see it online. They're selling furniture or they're selling a rental property and they'll ask for some type of a deposit first and the item might not even be available. We need to be aware of when we're asked to deposit or to send money. Ensuring that there is actually an item there, try to view it in person.
Oh, okay. So even Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace, those can be scams as well.
Yes, you need to. I think there's scams everywhere now.
What are some of the worst scams you've dealt with as a police officer?
One for me that really bothers me is the grandparent scam. I just feel that the scammers are just playing on our elderly and vulnerable population, people that were used to being able to take people at their word, and that's no longer the case. They play on their emotions, saying that there's a family member that's in need of assistance, and that generation is always willing to help, and they want to do whatever they can to help their grandchild out. And to me, that's just a very despicable thing to do.
I would agree with you on the despicability thing, if despicability is a word. I'm also concerned because AI is a thing, artificial intelligence. It's getting easier and easier to replicate voices.
Yes, that's very scary now with that technology that even now with me speaking to you, someone's going to be able to replicate my voice.
Sorry about that. But honestly, if we live in fear of that, we'll never speak in public again.
No, that's very true.
Yeah. There's other ways. So you get a call, and it really sounds like your nephew or your son or whatever, and they're crying, they're upset, and they need your help. What do you do? How do you keep a clear head?
I would be telling them, I'll call you right back. Get a number, see if they have a number. Once you start asking a few questions, you'll soon be able to see if they're able to answer any of your questions. Usually they get flustered once you start asking a lot of questions. Hang up, call your family to verify the information.
What if they say, but no, please, they'll be in trouble. They're mobsters. They've kidnapped me, whatever, you know?
That's again where they're playing on the emotions of people. And I said, we have to do our best to fight that urge to just help right at that moment. We need to look further into this. Hang up the phone, make that phone call just to verify what's actually going on with your.
And certainly if it is a police service or pertaining to be, you know, they're in trouble, you need to come bail them out, anything like that, immediate payment is not actually real. It's never going to be real.
No, and the other piece we've seen where they say they'll send a lawyer to your house to collect money. We don't do that. We don't send someone to your house to collect money. That's a huge red flag. There's different avenues at the courthouse to make payments for bail. We don't send people to your house to do that.
We're going to call out that number again. We'd love to hear from anybody. I know it can be embarrassing. So many people have perhaps fallen for scams. The smartest among us can do it because these people are professionals and they're really, really good. So don't be embarrassed. Give us a call, 204-788-0893. If you live outside the perimeter, you don't have a long-distance plan that covers calls to Winnipeg, the number is 1-800-268-5483. Now, are there scams that target children?
Yes, unfortunately, I think you've heard of sextortion. We've had some cases like that reported to us where someone will create a fake account on whether it be Facebook, Instagram, pretending to be someone they're not. They'll get involved with a person in some type of a romantic relationship, and intimate images are usually exchanged. And at that point, then there's some type of an extortion piece where they say they need to pay money, otherwise they're going to share that intimate image with their family members. We've been hearing from the RCMP as well that it seems to be targeting male teenage boys.
The danger there is that the kids can be really scared and think, oh no, I've messed up. They can be very upset. And there have been unfortunate cases where you know, kids have chosen to hurt themselves and to take some pretty drastic action. What would be your advice for parents and grandparents in preparing children so that this doesn't happen to them?
I think you just need to have that conversation with your children. I know there's a lot of speakers that are getting into schools to educate kids that this is going on. And the kids need to realize you could talk to your parents, you can ask for help. You don't need to be embarrassed. These people, like we said before, are good. They're trying to play on your emotions, and they make you do things you would normally do. But there's always an option. There's always people out there to help you. That's what we're here for. I know the Canadian Centre for
Child Protection?
Child Protection, yes. That's what I was going to say. They're always willing to help as well and have lots of resources that can help. I know their website is a very useful tool.
Yes, it has a lot of information there and some videos you can share as well. The important thing here is education. Brenda has joined the conversation to help us. Hi, Brenda. Thanks for calling in. Hello. What is it you'd like to share?
I was caught in a scam a while ago, and I really want to warn people about that. That's why I'm calling in.
I'm glad you're calling.
It had to do with somebody who said they were calling from my cell phone company. They had the last 4 digits of my account number. They had the date and amount of my last payment. And they told me that, and I had been a customer of this cell phone company for years. They told me that there was a loyalty program and they were going to give me a free iPhone. So I was very skeptical, but at that point I wasn't parting with anything. So I said, okay, send me the phone. So I told them I wanted a black phone. 10 minutes later, they phoned me back and told me that they had mixed my order up with somebody else's and that they had put in an order for a blue phone, and that order required payment. So I just started getting a text from the cell phone company telling me I'm paying for a new iPhone. At that point, I phoned them, and they said, no, this is fraud. And I put in a fraud claim immediately. And when the phone came, I refused delivery.
So walk us through this again. The scammers call you, and somehow they have your cell phone number and your the amount of your last payment.
And the last four digits of my account number.
They say, you've been such a loyal customer. We want to give you a free iPhone. And you say, sure, give me a free iPhone.
So the key to this whole thing is that second phone call where they tell me that they put it in wrong. So when I get billed by the cell phone company, I'm not surprised because they made a mistake. But it took me a while to figure out how this works. So what they do, and this was was verified by the fact that I refused the delivery. What they do is when you get the phone and it's the wrong color, they phone you and say, well, we're going to send you a shipping label to send it back. But when you do that, it's not going back to the cell phone company. It's going to them. And that's how they make the money. Now they've got a free iPhone with $1,500 that they can sell.
Holy complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. And what you said about, I considered myself to be a reasonably intelligent person, but they got me. And I was very frustrated with myself. But I just want people to know, somebody calls you up and says they're giving you a free cell phone, hang up. Just don't go any further.
Brenda, thank you so much for calling in today. Sergeant Dana McCallum, what do you say to that?
Wow, I have not heard that one. That's a new one. They come up with all sorts of creative ideas. I know our latest one had to do with them claiming to be a bank teller, and they had the person's banking information, and they walked them through transferring some money online, and they claimed that they were trying to do a test to see if their employees were trustworthy. And some money was transferred, and it turned out it was not legitimate. The other piece of it, they wanted some money transferred into a cryptocurrency account. And that's one thing that huge red flag. There's no agency that deals in cryptocurrency. That's a big red flag that something's not right.
Daphne's joining us now. Daphne, what's happened with you?
Well, it wasn't me. It was my grandma. And she passed away. So what happened to her is she got that phone call saying, hey, it's your grandson, it's your favorite grandson. I'm in trouble, I need money. And she stopped them by saying, I don't have a favorite grandchild. Who is this? And he couldn't give her a name. It went on for several minutes, and she was just insistent, I don't have a favorite. Who is this? And they gave up on her. And I know it's hard to lie, but I would suggest every senior out there, when you get that phone call, you don't say anything. You demand a name.
Absolutely. And more information than that. Very smart grandmother, Daphne.
Yeah, and she didn't even know what she was doing. She didn't realize it was a scam call. She was trying to figure out which grandchild this was.
Well, she did the right thing and just keep questioning them or just hang up ever. If it's really your favorite grandchild, they'll call back and have more information.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me, so.
Daphne, thank you so much for calling in.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I mentioned that sometimes scams, they grab you and people are embarrassed to share their story. We have someone calling in right now who's given us their name but doesn't want to share it online. What has happened with you? What's the scam that snagged you?
Is that me?
It is you. Hello. Okay. Thank you for calling Radio Noon.
Yes, it's regarding Leon's Manufacturing in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And if you send them a deposit for a machine, the machine is not available, and they don't return your deposit, even after asking numerous times.
That feels...
And they do this with tons and tons of customers, and the Better Business Bureau in Saskatchewan has discredited them, but they're still in business.
Well, I've got a police officer on the line. How would you go about stopping something like that, a company that's not being good to its customers, that's keeping deposit money when it shouldn't? And there must be a way to stop them.
Well, because this is farm machinery we're talking about, these are large amounts of money.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring in the sergeant from the Brandon Police Service, Sergeant McCallum. What would your thoughts be on that?
I think that probably sounds like a matter that would have to be reported there to your local police department. I'm not sure if it's RCMP there. Maybe they could look further into that for you. It's hard to comment without all of the details.
Well, that's, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask my director, Wendy, who just said something to me, to say it again because I couldn't hear her. Thanks everyone for hanging in there as Wendy told me, what I should say. It's great to have my back. Is there any recourse that Brenda could follow up on, or that our person who called and didn't give her name could follow up on? Sergeant McCallum, is there any recourse for that?
Well, like I said, not knowing all the specifics of her case, I would let her contact her local police where that business is to follow up on that matter. They would probably have more advice for her.
Well, that is amazing. Thank you so much for your input today. We really appreciate it. It can feel discouraging because we're hearing about these scams, and as you mentioned, the scammers are so smart, and they do seem to change the way their operations and the scams. They're always thinking of something new. How hard is it for police to follow up and actually catch these scammers?
It can be very challenging. Like we said, they're evolving and coming up with new ways to get the money, and they're creating these spoof emails, spoof accounts that look legitimate, and they're not. So tracking it down can be very difficult, especially if it goes out of country. A lot of time we don't have cooperation from other police agencies outside of our jurisdiction. So it can be very tricky to get the funds back.
Yes, I can imagine that. Well, Sergeant Anna McCallum, I'd love to thank you for your time today and your expertise. Thank you for being here for this conversation. And your advice to everyone listening would be, take your time and don't give out your information. Correct?
Exactly. Don't be afraid to say no. Make sure you do your research. Don't be giving out personal information.
Thank you very much. Sergeant Anna McCallum, is with the Brandon Police Service Public Information Office. Hello there, Faith Fundal.
Hello, Janet Stewart.
Thank you for joining us today.
It's always nice to be here. We're going to talk about cancer screening and late diagnosis on the program today. Cancer experts are warning the current screening recommendations use old data and lack up-to-date science-based medical advice. We're going to hear from a family doctor and GP oncologist to share why this could have grim consequences for millions of Canadians. So
that would have grim consequences for millions of Canadians.
It is a big deal. And as you know, science evolves over time. And so some folks like this doctor are, I guess, ringing the bell to let folks know.
And so also, too, because the science is getting so much better, we can have false positives, we can have concerns with stuff like that, and it just causes so much stress as you're waiting to know what's happening. Faith Fundal, thank you so much for your time today. Faith hosts Up to Speed, which is our program that airs here on CBC Radio 1 between 3 and 6 p.m. You can tune in anywhere you are listening to the CBC Listen app. Just pick local and Up to Speed, or you can watch the program on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search CBC Manitoba. It takes a village to raise a radio program, so I would like to thank our radio news reader today, Riley Lachuk, our videographer. Well, that's actually what we call the people who go out and gather the video. Travis is really, really talented, but he's actually the guy who just switches it to put it on YouTube. Didn't have a lot to play with today. Sorry about that, Travis, and everyone watching. We'll get more visual as we go along. He's our video guy, Travis Peterson. Thank you. Dylan Longhurst is playing the beautiful music we're hearing right now. Thank you, Dylan. Wendy Parker is talking in my wonderful headset, telling me, to turn left and turn right, and without her I'd get completely lost, so that's fantastic. Nellie Gonzalez is our show producer, and Leif Larson is our senior producer of audio. You are listening to CBC Radio 1. Thanks for being with us today. Coming up next, it's Writers and Company. Chat with you tomorrow.